Dustin shocked me because we were shooting a scene.
This. Look, you're gonna have to do what you're gonna have to do, and I'm gonna have to do what
I'm very sorry about this.
Okay. My wine glass was sitting there, and he just with his hand, brushed it so that it whizzed by my nose and broke on the wall and little pieces of glass.
For more than 5 decades, Meryl Streep has been Hollywood's gold standard. 3 Academy Awards. 21 nominations. A body of work so vast and varied that film scholars have built entire careers dissecting it. She has played a Holocaust survivor, a British Prime Minister, a tyrannical fashion editor, an opera singer, a war correspondent, and a witch who sings. She has inhabited accents from Warsaw to Washington, from Manchester to Manhattan, with a precision that borders on the supernatural. And through all of it, she has maintained something equally rare in Hollywood, her dignity. No tabloid wars. No open feuds. No scorched earth interviews. For decades, Meryl Streep was the one major star who seemed genuinely above the noise. But at 76, something shifted. In a series of candid conversations and rare unguarded moments, the woman who built a career on control and discipline let certain truths slip through. And those truths were sharper, more specific, and more startling than anyone expected. Because the names she named, the actors she described with barely concealed contempt, the collaborators she quietly walked away from, were not footnotes in Hollywood history. They were its headline attractions. Icons. Oscar winners. Legends in their own right. And Streep, it turns out, couldn't stand some of them. What follows are 6 of those stories. 6 actors, 6 clashes, and a lifetime of professional grievances that the most decorated actress in American film history finally stopped pretending didn't exist. Of all the stories that have emerged about Meryl Streep's difficult professional relationships, the one involving Dustin Hoffman remains the most documented, the most disturbing, and the one she has spoken about with the most unflinching clarity. Their 1979 film Kramer vs. Kramer won 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Actor for Hoffman, and Best Supporting Actress for Streep. To the outside world, it was a triumph. To Streep, it was something considerably more complicated. Hoffman was a committed practitioner of method acting, a philosophy that, in his hands, sometimes crossed the line between artistic immersion and outright aggression toward his fellow performers. On the set of Kramer vs. Kramer, his behavior toward Streep became a defining example of everything she believed was wrong with that approach. During the filming of an emotionally charged scene, Hoffman slapped Streep across the face without warning and without her consent. There was no rehearsal, no discussion, no agreement. He simply did it, believing the shock of real impact would produce a more authentic reaction from her. Streep has spoken about this incident in interviews over the years, describing it plainly: it was not acting. It was a violation of the basic trust that should exist between collaborators on a film set. But the slap was not the only incident. Throughout production, Hoffman taunted her between takes, made cutting personal remarks designed to destabilize her emotionally, and behaved in ways that Streep found professionally inexcusable. In one widely reported account, he stayed awake for days before a particularly grueling scene and arrived on set visibly deteriorated, prompting Streep to reportedly tell him, "Try acting, Dustin. It's a lot easier." Whether the exact words are precisely as reported, the sentiment they carry has never been disputed by anyone who was present. Streep found his methods not brave but reckless, not committed but cruel. She won her Oscar that year. She never worked with Dustin Hoffman again. The tension between Meryl Streep and Alec Baldwin is far less dramatic in its details than her history with Hoffman, but it is no less real. When the two were cast together in Nancy Meyers' 2009 romantic comedy It's Complicated, Hollywood expected the combination to be electric. 2 commanding personalities, both at the height of their craft, in a film built on the chemistry between its leads. What the audience saw on screen looked effortless. What happened behind the camera was considerably more strained. The fundamental problem was philosophical. Streep has always been a meticulous preparer. She arrives on set having already done the internal work, having mapped the emotional terrain of every scene with a thoroughness that borders on architectural. Baldwin, by contrast, is an instinctive actor who finds his best performances in the unexpected, in the unscripted moment, in the line rewritten at the last second because something else felt more alive. For him, spontaneity is not a shortcut, it is the destination. For Streep, it is an obstacle. According to people who worked on the production, the friction between them was palpable. Streep, ever the professional, never confronted Baldwin publicly or made the tension explicit. But the stiffness was visible to crew members whenever he deviated from the script mid-scene, pulling her out of the emotional space she had carefully constructed. Streep, in later reflections on the project, chose her words with the diplomatic care that she typically reserves for subjects she finds genuinely difficult. She acknowledged their different philosophies without warmth, the kind of measured language that, from a woman of her directness, speaks volumes. The two have not appeared together in a film since. Kevin Kline is one of the most gifted comic actors of his generation, an accomplished stage performer with Tony Awards and an Oscar to his name. He and Meryl Streep appeared together in Alan J. Pakula's devastating 1982 adaptation of Sophie's Choice, and on paper it was impeccable casting. In reality, the experience left a mark on Streep that she never entirely let fade. The core of the conflict, as it so often is with Streep, came down to preparation. For Sophie's Choice, Streep undertook one of the most rigorous character preparations of her career. She studied Polish and German, worked for months with dialect coaches, immersed herself in survivor testimonies, and constructed Sophie Zostawski from the psychological ground up. She understood Sophie's fractured accent not merely as a performance choice but as a window into the woman's fractured identity, a survivor caught between languages, between selves, between the life she had lived and the horror that had consumed it. The accent was not decoration. It was biography. Kline, whose approach to the role was more intuitive, reportedly questioned during rehearsals whether Streep's focus on the technical intricacies of her dialect was serving the emotional truth of the performance or merely substituting for it. To a casual observer, it might have sounded like a reasonable artistic question. To Streep, it was a dismissal of the entire foundation on which she had built the character. The warmth between them evaporated. Later interviews in which Kline described her process as somewhat academic, almost certainly intended as neutral or even admiring, landed with Streep as a dismissal. A longtime producer who knew both actors said simply that she respected his talent but stopped trusting his judgment. She never appeared with him again. The feud that never happened, except that it did, quietly, for decades, between Meryl Streep and Jack Nicholson is one of Hollywood's most fascinating untold stories. The two were never cast together in a major film. They were never in the same room often enough to have a visible falling out. And yet industry insiders have known for years that Streep harbored a deep and lasting contempt for Nicholson that shaped her career choices in concrete ways. The root of it was not personal animosity in the conventional sense. It was ideological. Jack Nicholson has always represented a certain type of Hollywood masculinity, the swagger, the self-mythology, the casual brilliance that wears its talent loosely and refuses to take the craft too seriously. He is famous for his irreverence about preparation, for his belief that instinct and charisma are the true engines of great screen performance. In one widely circulated remark, he described intensive preparation in terms so dismissive that they amounted to a direct insult to every actor who believed otherwise. For Streep, who had built her entire professional identity on the opposite philosophy, it was not an opinion. It was an attack. Casting director Juliet Taylor, who worked with both actors across multiple decades, once observed that Nicholson represented everything Streep found troubling about the culture of Hollywood stardom, the prioritizing of personality over craft, of charisma over truth. Streep never had to say it herself. She simply ensured, through quiet but firm professional signals, that she and Nicholson were never placed in the same project. Studios tried, repeatedly, across the 1980s and 1990s. Every time, the effort collapsed. The great film that Streep and Nicholson might have made together remains one of cinema's most tantalizing missing chapters. The tension between Meryl Streep and Gwyneth Paltrow is perhaps the easiest to understand, because it is rooted in something that goes beyond personal dislike and into a genuine difference of values. Streep came from nothing, artistically speaking. She attended Vassar College and the Yale School of Drama. She worked regional theater. She clawed her way into a film industry that was not particularly interested in her type of beauty or her type of intelligence. Every role she won, she earned. That sense of merit, of craft as the only legitimate currency, is central to everything she has ever said about acting. Gwyneth Paltrow was born into the industry. Her mother is the accomplished actress Blythe Danner. Her father was director and producer Bruce Paltrow. Steven Spielberg was her godfather. She grew up inside Hollywood, not outside looking in. Doors that most actors never find open for her before she had fully demonstrated what was behind them. When she won the Academy Award for Best Actress for Shakespeare in Love in 1999, at a ceremony where Streep had been widely expected to win for her work in One True Thing, the result crystallized something for Streep that she had been feeling for years. She never said Paltrow's name in any public context that was less than entirely correct. But those who knew her well noted that she was conspicuously absent from Streep's frequent celebrations of younger actresses, the Cate Blanchetts, the Amy Adamses, the Jessica Chastains whom she praised repeatedly and specifically. Paltrow, despite being one of the most famous actresses of her generation, simply did not exist in Streep's publicly expressed pantheon. At industry events, their exchanges were brief, formal, and free of any warmth. One account from a former publicist suggests Paltrow was quietly aware of the chill and genuinely puzzled by it, never having had any direct confrontation with Streep. But Streep's opinion of what Paltrow represented, inherited privilege packaged as talent, had been formed long before any personal slight occurred. In some ways, the friction between Meryl Streep and Jeremy Irons is the most intellectually interesting of all, because it is a conflict not between discipline and chaos, not between craft and celebrity, but between two entirely different conceptions of what disciplined acting actually means. Both Streep and Irons are classically trained. Both are regarded as technical virtuosos. Both have won Oscars and spent their careers being praised for their precision. And yet when their approaches came into direct contact, the incompatibility was immediate and, it proved, permanent. Streep's technique begins from the inside out. She constructs a character's interior world first, the psychology, the history, the emotional wounds, and allows the external details, the voice, the posture, the rhythm, to emerge from that interior reality. Every surface choice is rooted in something deeper. Irons works from the outside in. His performances are sculpted, architectural, extraordinarily controlled. He builds the exterior with enormous care and allows the interior to be implied rather than excavated. It is a legitimate and highly effective approach, responsible for some of the most compelling screen performances of the past 4 decades. To Streep, however, it felt emotionally evasive. During work they did together, including scenes that demanded genuine emotional collision, she reportedly found his restraint not elegant but absent. His refinement read to her as distance rather than depth. There was a specific moment, recalled by crew members, in which Irons questioned her meticulous attention to accent work, suggesting the audience would respond more to feeling than to phonetic authenticity. The room went quiet. Streep did not argue. She simply withdrew, and the warmth that might have existed between them was gone from that point forward. Irons, in subsequent years, has described their approaches diplomatically as simply different. Streep has been less forgiving, remarking in at least one interview that some actors confuse stillness with truth. Nobody in the room needed her to explain who she had in mind. What these 6 stories, taken together, reveal about Meryl Streep is not pettiness. It is not bitterness. It is something considerably more interesting, a coherent and deeply held artistic philosophy so central to her identity that any perceived attack on it, whether through recklessness, dismissiveness, inherited advantage, or simple incompatibility, registered as a genuine wound. Streep has always believed that acting is a moral act, that it requires the full investment of the self, that it demands respect for the character, for the audience, and for the fellow actors sharing the scene. When she encountered people who did not share that belief, she did not lecture them. She simply left. Quietly, professionally, permanently. At 76, with nothing left to prove and nothing left to lose, she has allowed some of those departures to become visible. And in doing so, she has given the rest of us something rare, a glimpse behind the diplomacy, into the convictions of a woman who spent 50 years not just performing greatness but defending what she believed greatness required.